This one don't have that damn pop. I really like the pop, but you know, where the lid pops up, lets you know it's fresh, safe to drink. But they were out of the old Starbucks this morning, so we had to settle for the Dunkin' Donuts. So we'll make it work. I had a comment from a guy about setting gains on your amplifier. You know, if you don't have a DD1 or the clip light. I love the clip light on amps, man. It just makes setting the gain so much easier. But, you know, if you don't have a clip light or the DD1, he heard the old legend about, you know, there's a power factor where if the amp says it's, you know, say 4,000 watt, that you can take, you know, your voltage and some other things to get a magic number that you can, you know, probe in the old speaker outputs and, you know, turn the gain up to that point, and your gain is set because it's set at the power the amp is supposed to put out. Now, man, in logic, that sounds great, but in reality, there's just a few problems with that. And yeah, that's the problems that we're gonna discuss this morning, guys. If you have a 4K amp or any amp, but we're just using 4K for sake of argument and, you know, just reference here, you should be able to take, you know, the voltage that you have in your electrical system here and do a formula and get a number, and that's the number you should be able to turn your old gain up to cleanly to get that 4,000 watts. Now, I don't think that's ever going to be relevant in car audio. Some people call it power factor. I don't know a whole lot about it. I mean, I've seen people talk about it a lot, and a lot of people want to swear by it, but it just won't work. And when I got into car audio way back in the day, it still wouldn't work then. It surely ain't going to work now. But let's just pick two 4K amps to use for a good old example of this. You know, first we're going to pick, let's say, the Sundown Salt 4. They make a 4K, right? I'm pretty sure they do. So we'll take the old Sundown Salt 4. I've never used a Sundown amp in my life, but I have a lot of friends that have. I've seen a lot of dyno results of them, so I figured it'd be a really good example. Just not Starbucks. Okay, so you try to use this whole power factor thing on a Sundown Salt 4, and you'll be able to get your 4K easy. It's gonna work. Without a doubt, it'll work. But you're gonna be leaving, you know, 2,000 watts probably on the table that you could have had if you would have used, you know, a scope or a DD1, or if they have a clip light in them, using the clip light. Because we all know the Sundown Salt amps, like, you know, I think the 8K is actually a 12K. The 12K is an actual 20K. You know, I think the 4K is probably a 5 or 6K, and so on and so forth. And I think this all happened because of Ryan putting out that SPLX or whatever it is, you know, amplifier that like just dominated the whole Big D Wiz 3,500 amp shootout, you know, because it put out like double power or whatever. So I think that, yeah, I think that they took that bitterly, and they're like, we're going to do the same thing Orion did. But, you know, a lot of amplifiers actually put out more power than they're rated for. Like, you know, I've clamped cleanly, easily 10K out of my old DS18 Hooligan KOs. So that's why power factor wouldn't really work in that situation, because a lot of amplifiers now are putting out more power than they are rated for. So doing this formula, it just ain't going to work on those amps, because, you know, it'll work. I mean, it'll work fine, but you're losing power. You're leaving power on the table. good, usable, clean power. Now let's go to the other end of the spectrum here. And I know our good old friends at Boss, they make a 4K. Now, you go through and you do the math, and you're back there, you know, you got your multimeter hooked up, and you're like, I'm going to turn these gains up and get that good old clean 4K. And next thing you know, you're nowhere near your number, and you got the gain maxed out. Little do you know that you're all the way in clipping. There's nothing left. You're clipped to death. You're at the max amount of power you can get. Dump truck. Now at this point, you know, you got the gain maxed out. You're looking at the number on the old multimeter, and it's nowhere near where you should be. So you get out the old iPhone calculator and you do the math, and it's like, wow, I'm at 900 watts. We'll say 1,000. We'll round it up, you know. So you've gotten 1,000 out of the 4K that you thought you were going to get. Guys, this is why power factor don't work. If it's called, I ain't sure it's called power factor. I think it is. But I'm talking the old, I'm gonna call it the old voodoo method, you know, where you take your vehicle voltage and you do some math to get up there, you know, to the number your amp supposed to put out. That's why it'll never work. On one end of the spectrum, and there is a line that divides all this, there's going to be very few amps right here on that line. And on this side of that line are your little budget amps that, you know, they just want to grossly misrepresent, lying to you, what their amplifiers are going to do, and they're on this side. You know, this side of the spectrum has the lies. On this side of the spectrum here, you have your good quality amplifiers that they like having the reputation of doing more than they're supposed to. You know, like the salt amps, the Synergy WFO amps are notorious for that, because I don't know what their 8K is actually really is, but I've seen that 8K clamp almost 16K. So this is why that would never work. You got good companies that, you know, they're like, hey, you know, we got a good solid 12K out of this amp. Call it an 8K. We'll be done. Call it an 8K. And then you got your really cheap companies, you know, I think Rockville. I've seen Rockville amps do decent numbers. I don't know if they've ever done rated, but Boss is notorious for that. Boss, Dual, a bunch of these other companies, they over here. And, you know, they're like, hey, we made an 800 watt amp. Let's call it an 8K. 4K. But still, you know, that is why the power factor is, we're going to call it, and what the comment listed it as. That's why it'll never work. You know, I think way back in the day, people were like, hey, this is a good way to set your gain, whatever. I don't know. I don't. The guy that I learned a whole lot from about car audio, I don't think he set his gains using that method, but, you know, this is way back in the day. But I did see him, you know, like get his amperage and voltage with a multimeter on amplifiers before, and he did the math to see how much real-time power that he got. And I thought that was pretty genius. I don't think he ever set his gains that way. Come to think of it, I was never really there when he set gains. I don't know if he used them all. I know he didn't use the DD1 because we didn't have that tool way back then. But, you know, now there's really no need to ever try to do some, you know, voodoo method of setting your gains like that. There is a way to set it with a multimeter. That dude, EMF Audio, I think, I watched a couple of his videos, and I think he was setting the gain with a multimeter. I don't know, but really what it all boils down to now, guys, is you can grab the old Lumi oscilloscope on Amazon for about $100, and I know they'll get you really good in the ballpark and close. You can get a DD1, I think, for around $200. And then most amps now are made with a clip light on them. Now, my buddy Billy, his DCs didn't have a clip light. And we used my multimeter. But, you know what? Them DC amps, and the same as my Vital Power, which Big D Wiz still has my Vital Power. He's supposed to do a video on how to properly box an amp up for shipping with it. I love Derek. That dude's cool. But anyway, guys, like the DC amp and the Vital Power, which some people in a thread said they're pretty much the same amplifier, the DC 9K and that Vital Power 7. What they do have in common is when you're setting the gain, even without a clip light, and you turn them up to a certain point, the amplifier itself will buzz. Like, it will literally buzz. And using the DD1 to set the gain on that, when you turn the gain knob just slightly up to where it first starts to buzz, the DD1 will still not show any distortion. You give it just a bumpsy, and then the DD1 distortion light will come on. So, you know, I'm 100% certain that that buzz means we're in distortion. So really, even on that amp, you don't really need a DD1 or a clip light because you got the buzz. A lot of you Korean guys know what I'm talking about with the buzz. But it's something to go off of. You know, it's really nice that it does that. I don't know if they did that on purpose or if just when you get into distortion, the parts in the amplifier start going haywire. But I noticed it on the Vital Power. I noticed it on Billy's DC 9Ks when we set the gains on them. And, you know, it's all good from there, guys. But yeah, don't use power factor, you know. Because I don't know of any amplifier that's right on the money with what they say they're going to do. There's a few that they're right there, but the majority of them are over here doing way more power, so you're going to lose power. Most of them are over here, and they're never, ever, ever going to get close to that power. And if you try to, you're just going to blow something. But that's going to be it for today, guys. Peace out and bass on.